Hello everyone, and welcome back to the SNES in chronological order, the series where I am playing every Super Nintendo game released in the US in chronological order for an hour, and telling you whether or not it's worth going back to these games. In the last episode, we played the launch titles for the Super Nintendo, and I'd pretty much heard of or played all 5 of those games. In this episode, we're playing the 8 games that Wikipedia says were released in September, and kind of having the opposite experience, where I really haven't touched any of these games yet. But I don't really have anything else to say for this intro, so let's get started with the Chess Master. I am a musician. I'm a musician who likes music that many people would consider objectively bad. But boy, that sure is some music. I do not remember the times before I knew how chess pieces moved. I learned chess at a very early age. This information may come as a surprise to you after I tell you I'm not sure I've ever actually won a chess game, except against Super Baby Mode AI in a chess app on my phone. I've sometimes been interested in learning to actually play chess, but as soon as I try looking into it, the first thing I see is, okay, here are the top 20 beginner openings to learn. My eyes glaze over, and I go play Candy Crush instead. The Chess Master is an interesting Super Nintendo toy. Primarily, it acts as a way to play chess against an AI, although you can play as 2 players, obviously. The difficulty options are kind of uninterpretable to me. If someone knows what these weird numeric difficulties mean, please let me know in the comments, as I'm obviously too lazy to look them up. The 3D chessboard that the game shows you is cool. I think it looks good, but I don't exactly like looking at the 3D chessboard to play chess for some reason. So for the games I actually attempted, I used the normal 2D chessboard. My battles against the newcomer AI went really poorly. I have no chess skill, so take this assessment with a grain of salt, but the newcomer AI plays kind of cowardly? It never wants to push its pieces out unless it definitely has a great move. So eventually, because I am very bad at chess, I would inevitably make a mistake that would result in me losing a little bit too much power at some point, and the loss would snowball from there. For a simple chess game, the Chess Master has a lot of options. I'm assuming because if it didn't, there wouldn't be a single reason to purchase this video game over a cheap plastic and cardboard chess set. I will need to mention though, this game having no listenable music is not a positive. If I'm sitting thinking about how to not lose to some AI with the intelligence of a toaster and failing, I'd at least like to have some background music for it. But the only track in the game is the title screen theme, and that's I think if I knew more about chess, I'd have had a bit more fun with this game. This was an interesting piece of software to look at for a bare-bones chess game. It had a bunch of stuff to mess with, including watching the AI versus the AI, where they just played the game for a little bit and then forced a draw rather than playing the game to a real conclusion. The fantasy chess set in the game is cool too, although I wish they would have included a 3D version of the fantasy chess set. I would have liked to see what that looked like. This game interests you for some reason? It seems to me to be a fully featured piece of chess software for the Super Nintendo. Or you could download a chess app on your phone. I'll let you decide. Playing Drakken to me feels like how it might feel for someone whose first Elder Scrolls game was Skyrim, trying to go back and play Daggerfall, or Arena. If you're not aware, Daggerfall and Arena are the first 2 Elder Scrolls games. In the opposite order. Arena was first, then Daggerfall. But anyway, Drakken is a 4-party member D&D style RPG. The beginning feels a little bit like the beginning to Final Fantasy I to me, in that you take a pre-made party of 4 or make your own party and you're given a bit of an introduction to the world and an objective, which is to visit some dude whose name I can't remember's castle. The overworld for this game is a sight to behold. If my secondary sources I refuse to fact check are correct, this was close to the first open world, almost 3D RPG on any console. Or in existence? After you take a few steps in the world, you will probably run into a random battle. Technically, time passes in pseudo-real time in this game as far as I can tell, so you can run into random battles standing still as well. I don't enjoy the combat in this game. You can issue commands to your party members, but they feel a little bit more like suggestions. I don't get how spellcasting works at all. I can tell any character to cast a spell, and I don't know if it ever works. It doesn't seem like experience is split between your party members either. It looks like the member who gets the killing blow gets all the experience. The reason I figured this out was because I eventually ran into a bow and arrow, and I gave it to my mage, and my mage just started absolutely destroying every enemy we ran into and leveling up very rapidly, while my other characters did not. The character animations in battle look pretty bad, and I have no idea how the computer-controlled player characters make any of their decisions. I had to use a guide to figure out how to get through the first room of the castle you're supposed to go to as your first objective in this game. The icons on the lower right-hand side are your controls for the game, and what you're supposed to do for the first part is use the eyeball to look around the room. It'll tell you some icons that are on the door, and you're supposed to click the door that is the Earth symbol because you're in the Earth Castle or whatever. One, I think that is only mentioned literally once at the beginning of the game, so God help you if you forget that piece of information. And two, the eyeball thing never gets effectively used again in this same castle. You can explore the whole place using the eyeball to look around, and nothing else will happen. Speaking of looking around the whole castle, there are some aggressive NPCs in the castle, which I don't know, doesn't really make sense, considering I think you were supposed to be invited there. But even after the aggressive NPCs that are non-aggressive in this game also act like aggressive NPCs in terms of animation and what happens whenever you're looking at the screen. And that's just a super weird design decision to me. I don't get why the game looks and acts like this. There are other buildings you can go into in this game, where when you go into them, you just get a text box and you see a person who is inside of the building. There's also, I found a merchant who acts similarly to a text box, and then you can potentially buy something for the merchant, but everything is ridiculously expensive, at least from the merchant that I found. If I wanted to, I could continue talking about the design decisions that I don't like in this game for another 5 minutes, which I'd prefer not to do. We've got other games to talk about. If you like playing old archaic RPGs, running around in this game for a while could be fun for you, but I ran into like 3 too many adventure game style death traps. I'm just gonna go back to Baldur's Gate, or Fallout, or Neverwinter Nights, if I want a classic RPG experience, as this game has too many problems to ever really do it for me. Speaking of old games with little to offer, here's Hyperzone. I don't know what to call this game. Is it a rail shooter? Is it a Star Fox prototype? This game has no options except for inverting your controls. This game has no power-ups. You move your ship, you can slow it down, and you can shoot. There is a score, but no high scoreboard, not even one that gets erased when you turn the console off. When you get to level 3, you get a different ship. This game is not as good as Gradius 3. Super R-Type and USN Squadron are going to be in this video, but I haven't played them as of writing this part of the script. I know UN Squadron is better than this game. I've never played Super R-Type, but it probably is also better than this game. I think Hyperzone looks cool, but playing this game for an hour straight was truly boring. This is like slow, unfun Space Harrier, which is ironic considering one of the points of the game is apparently that you're supposed to go fast. At least, I think it's ironic. I grew up in the 90s, so that Alanis Morissette song completely messed up my understanding of what irony is. Go play Space Harrier. Go play Space Harrier in a Yakuza game arcade, so you can play 2 better video games than this at the same time. I'm surprised we made it this long before talking about a sports game. Hell's All-in-One Golf is a competent early golf game for the Super Nintendo. I know I may be in a small minority, but I really like golf video games, specifically Mario Golf for the Game Boy Advance and Everybody's Golf on PS4. I've actually reached a somewhat difficult point in script writing for this episode. For all the games I've talked about so far, I could easily say, just go play a better video game. And I don't just mean a new video game because these games are 30 years old. Space Harrier came out 6 years before Hyperzone did. That's why I said Space Harrier in the Hyperzone section. I was harsh on Drakken, but Final Fantasy IV is gonna come out in 2 months. In Super Nintendo time that we're talking about. Final Fantasy IV came out 2 months after Drakken did, in both Japan and the US. And not to spoil it, but I think Final Fantasy IV is a masterpiece. I'm torn between not wanting to tear all the games I'm playing apart with 30 years of hindsight, as it's patently unfair, but wanting to be genuine with conveying the feelings I had while playing these games. Because it isn't fair to just give mediocre, or worse than mediocre, games a pass. Although I'm not sure how to approach golf games, as I never touched golf video games until the PS2 and GBA era. Anyways, let's talk about this golf game. This game has a bunch of options. I didn't get to explore many of them. I spent all my time with this game playing stroke play on the easiest difficulty. Not that the difficulty on stroke play seems to matter, as you aren't actually playing against anyone. It may have to do with your tee position and or wind speed on holes, but I didn't have time to check that. I thought the difficulty may change what course you were playing on, but it doesn't appear to be that way. You also can't play just the front or back 9. You have to play all 18 holes if you want to play stroke play. You have pretty normal golf game controls here, but I want to note the accuracy controls are really brutal. Being only a little bit off can completely ruin a shot. I also have no idea how putting works in this game. It definitely isn't intuitive. I also don't like the way the ball bounces or reacts to slopes. You do have access to 3D models of the hole where you can look at how the course slopes, but looking at it is slow and cumbersome. Also, can someone tell me which way the wind is blowing? Is it the wide end of the arrow or the pointy end of the arrow? My guess is it's the pointy end, but I'm not sure. I'm also not really sure what the point of having multiple different clubs to choose from is if there are only 18 holes that are always the same. It seems like the standard set of clubs is perfectly fine for what they did. Super R-Type is an arcade-style space shooter. It's difficult. You fly from left to right, and you shoot stuff. It defaults to the easy difficulty, but that was too difficult for me, so I put it on novice. The game is split between level sections which involve dodging obstacles and shooting enemies, and boss sections, with no checkpoint in between those things, which is a definite negative for me as I suck at video games. The sprites in this game are detailed and chunky. I don't like the designs of most of the enemies in this game because I still can't actually tell what they are supposed to be when I look at them, but Some real artistry is happening here, and there's no accounting for taste. I found the music to be a bit lackluster, except for the third stage theme, which I ended up taking a real liking to after getting stuck there for like 20 minutes. Speaking of being stuck on a stage for 20 minutes, this is the first game I've talked about in this series that actually has infinite continues. At least it appears to on both easy and novice. I don't know if that's the case for higher difficulties. Your ship's power-ups come in the form of either minor modifications to your ship, like a missile or heat-seeking rockets. There's also things that are like options from Gradius, but don't do the exact same thing. And a beach ball that shoots bullets and changes its ammo type based on what letter it is you pick up. You can also shoot the beach ball forwards or backwards based on how you pick it up, and it has a different ammo type when it isn't actually attached to your ship. This game requires you to be a little bit more nimble with your ship's movement than other arcade shooters I've played, and I like that they made environmental hazards a mechanic in the way that they did, although they kind of put some pretty unfair ambushes in some places, which I really don't appreciate in a one-hit death and minimal checkpoint game. I did not like fighting the first boss of this game. That was actually why I put the difficulty on Novice, because it had a weird speed-up attack that I could never actually figure out how to dodge, until when I put the game on Novice, it simply did not do that speed-up attack. I did enjoy the second boss. It was weird looking and had an exciting and claustrophobic fight. And the third boss also had an interesting fight, but by the end of my play session, I was way too tired of playing the third stage over and over and over and over again to want to learn that fight, as I didn't love it like I did the second. Ultimately, I think Super R-type stages are a little too long to not have checkpoints, and even with infinite continues, it can be grating to do the same thing for 3 to 5 minutes over a 20-minute period, when you've effectively solved a level but have to play through it repeatedly just to see new content for 10 to 15 seconds before you die again to another thing you haven't seen before and don't exactly have enough time to react to. If this game looks appealing to you, you should definitely try it. It's at least worth some of your time, especially if these kinds of games are more your thing. USN Squadron really sets itself apart from the arcade shooters we've talked about so far in this series. The game starts out with an almost anime-style opening and tries to be as cool as possible right off the bat, which I guess is to be expected from Capcom. You have 3 characters to choose from, and the game gives you a vague description of what sets them apart from each other. After you pick a character, you are given a stage select, and you see what is going to be our map of the game. Unlike other linear arcade-style shooters, you have some amount of freedom with stage selection in this game after you clear the first level. Or if you die in the first level and the mobile enemies get in range of your level select. There are mobile enemies that rapidly advance towards your base for each time you fail a mission. I think they also move if you succeed a mission, because their intent is to attack your base, and if they get too close to your base, you have to fight them until you defeat them. After you pick your stage, you see a large number of planes that could be at your disposal if you had the money to buy them. And after you select your plane, you get to see purchasable, optionable weapon that the plane that you have selected can use. Gameplay is typically traditional space shooter fare, but the game designers put a lot of effort into making each level feel unique and different from the next. It makes purchasing your sub-weapon options feel like meaningful choices after you get access to the second plane, which has a wider and more expensive range of sub-weapon options. With the entry-level plane, you don't really have to think too hard because buying all the sub-weapons for the entry-level plane is pretty cheap. I feel like I should make the important observation that this is a more realistic setting, in that you and your enemies are more traditional military craft. There is also a level-up system that I don't exactly understand. I think it's some amount of experience per enemy defeated, but I'm not sure if it has to do with the items that increase your shot power or not. I don't know if those are actually your experience or if just shooting down the enemies is. The primary advantage to leveling up appears to be increasing the number of hits you can take before you are shot down, which starts at 2. The first time you're hit, your health drops to 0, then if you get hit again, you are shot down. As you level up, you get the chance to avoid getting hit for some amount of time before your health bar goes back up, signaling you can get hit twice again before losing your life. I appreciate this multi-hit mechanic, and especially its advancement based on the level. It's something that most arcade-style shooters don't really offer. I will say this game needs it though, because in my opinion, there's a bunch of bullcrap attacks that enemies can make, and ambushes and those kinds of things that make the game feel a little bit unfair in certain parts. This game's levels feel like they are the perfect length to me. Just at the time I'm getting a little bit tired of shooting down normal enemies, the boss shows up. There's a submarine encounter in the game that I particularly enjoyed, but it definitely defied several laws of physics. UN Squadron was a fresh change of pace for me, and I enjoyed my hour with it. Try it out. You'll probably have fun as long as you put it on easy for the first few tries like I did. Populous is a manifest destiny simulator. You are a supposed benevolent god, and your job as a benevolent god is to flatten land for your followers to build different houses on, and then suggest that your followers go commit genocide on the followers of the evil god who is also on your plane of existence. In order to do this, you will need to obtain a PhD in history or archaeology. I don't know which one you need to be able to decipher these hieroglyphs that are your command options, because the game interface sure doesn't tell you how to do it. You need to guide your followers to new flat lands so that they can populate the barren fields with no resources. As your followers colonize the land, you get more powerful, and you can use this power that you build up to exact your benevolent wrath on your opposing deity's populace. The game pace feels a little slow, but that's probably because I had no idea what I was doing the entire time I was playing. The cursor moves too slow for my taste, and like Drakken, you can only give your followers suggestions as opposed to real command. But it makes a little bit more sense here since you are literally a god with worshippers. I don't like the one music track I heard. Playing started to feel kind of samey once I got to the point where my population was actually getting larger than my opponents. Once I got to that point, because it was at the hour mark of my recording and I was definitely never going to play this game again, I hit the Armageddon button. That's right, this game has an Armageddon button. And my army ended up losing even though it was larger. Seems like a bunch of people ended up falling in the swamp on their way to the mutually assured destruction location. I don't know if my opponent put that swamp there or if Jay just randomly walked into my swamp that I had made in the opponent's land for some reason. I'd be lying if I said I didn't have any fun playing this game for an hour. But boy, does this game suffer from being old and not on the PC. It is another interesting artifact that I've played, so you don't have to. I have never found a baseball video game that speaks to me enough that I want to spend a lot of time playing it. And Super Bases Loaded definitely didn't change that. I struggled with the controls when I first started, so I had to read the manual just to figure out how to play the game. Which is a weird thing to complain about, honestly, now that I think about it. It's kind of funny, there are a lot of people that complain about the number of tutorials they have to read in video games nowadays, forgetting that back in the day you usually needed to read a literal book to figure out why you were losing so badly. I think this game looks good for an early Super Nintendo title, but it is an MLB licensed, so the teams are made up, and the logos they use look like they came out of a kid who just learned how to draw that Angular S's notebook. There's no season play, which I typically want out of a sports game if I'm ever going to care about playing it for any meaningful amount of time. I'm gonna be honest, I would spend some time actually talking about the mechanics of the game, but even after playing like 20 innings, I still really don't understand most of what's going on. And it's not from lack of trying. Like I said, I read the manual. I'm so bad at pitching that the AI once got 2 home runs in a row on me. When I'm batting, I have no idea how I'm supposed to look at the picture and then how the ball comes out of their hand to figure out how I'm supposed to swing. The depth perception when the ball is in the air is disorienting, and God help you if the ball bounces, you'll never figure out how to pick it up. I mention this because twice when I had the ball bounce and I tried to catch it with my player, both times the AI just literally ran an entire home run while I was trying to get the ball back to the diamond. The game has a cool presentation style and decent music, but I don't have any good things to say about any real aspect of playing the game. If I had more time to decipher what the manual says, I think I could get more enjoyment out of this game. But I've given this game an hour, and I think I've got at least a dozen more baseball games I'm going to be playing for this series. So the chances that this game is going to be the best one are pretty low. You should probably pass on this game.
Hello everyone, Post-Video Buck here. Thanks for making it to the end of this video. We talked about 8 games today instead of 5, but I managed to do it in a shorter amount of time. I don't know how loud my dog is being because I am recording this on my phone for the first time because I grew frustrated with my webcam quality. So hopefully this is better quality video at least. And hopefully my dog stops moving. Anyway. I've got to say, I wasn't a huge fan of this set of games besides UN Squadron. Everything else felt like I had a few too many things that I could complain about to make it worth playing this game nowadays. You know, I implied this in some of the game commentary, but there are a bunch of good video games, and I don't think there is an issue with saying, hey, these games, even if they're old or historic, may not be worth your time. And part of the reason for doing this project is finding games that are actually worth your time and worth going back to and playing from, 30 years ago. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and maybe subscribe to my channel so that you'll be able to see more of these as they come along. Planning to release them weekly, gonna limit them more to around 5 games per episode in order to accomplish that, just to give myself enough time to edit and write a script that I'm happy with. Also, I'm looking for a little bit of feedback. If you make it to the end, in the last episode, I tried to give a few more anecdotes and give a slower paced delivery to give each game its own amount of time to shine. In this episode, I tried to keep my scripts concise while still fully describing the game and making any comments that I felt were meaningful. And in doing this, I feel like I can't show as much of the game if I'm speaking at a brisker pace and leaving out pointless anecdotes. If you're watching in time with this series coming out, let me know if you prefer longer or shorter sections for games where I'm not really sure or don't think you should actually go back to them. I don't want to waste anyone's time, but I want to give a game its own time to shine. I think each game deserves to at least show itself off. It's just some games don't have that much to show, But yeah, thanks for watching. Like and sub, leave a comment, and see you next week. Have a good day.